Hello, folks. Brandon Chapman with you today. It's Monday night's video. Monday Night Football. No, Monday night's video for TheoTrade. It is November 8th, 2021. Interesting day in the market. As you look at the S&P, we continue to grind higher, just 0.09% up today on today's session. And as you look at what's happening to the ATR, this is the average true range. This measures the range between the high and low, or from the previous day's close to the next day's high and low. You'll see that the daily ATR continues to diminish as the price advances. And as you look at where we've been, right, 40, 50 points, boy, we're not even really approaching that in most days over the course of the last several weeks after the initial punch back on October 14th and 15th. It's been a slow grind higher, probably an historic slow grind higher. I'm going to share some stats with you. As you look at the VIX was higher on today's session, over 17. And normally you'd expect to see, as the market's grinding higher and the ATR, or the range each day, keeps diminishing, you'd expect the VIX might be breaking 15 and marching towards 12. But no, that's not what's happening right now. The VIX is getting bid. And if you look at it here today, the VVIX, this is the volatility of the VIX. Again, what we're seeing here is we're crossing above 110 into that VAMA zone area. Again, a sign of caution right now for the market more generally. We might be able to tie this back a little bit to some of the statements from the Federal Reserve officials that spoke today. Overall, neutral to hawkish. Again, as you look at the dot plot, as you look at the anticipated tapering that's expected to happen between treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, is the market finally starting to feel the pinch a little bit? That's a big question. Now, let's do a quick recap here. Goldman Sachs put out some data, I believe, on this. As you look at the S&P, let's go back to the SPX here. Over the course of the last, lasted a while, we've had a very, very strong surge since the COVID lows. The S&P is sitting at a handle at 32.5 PE. That's the highest, right, since the dot-com crisis. The S&P 500 is 7% above the highest price target based on a Bloomberg survey. So surveying whoever they want to survey, we're about 7% higher than the year-end expectations for the S&P 500. Stocks have their fifth consecutive week up. This is the best in the last 14 months. So it's been a while since we've seen this continued streak of 5 consecutive weeks higher. The Nasdaq 100, I'll get me another one here for S&P 500. This is the best run we've seen since 1990. Okay, you start to look back here. How much we've moved, the best since 1990. Nasdaq 100, 2 consecutive weeks higher. So let's just bring up the Qs or the NDX here. If you look at it on a weekly basis, we've had 2 consecutive weekly advances. That's the best since 2017 was the last time it did that. We're basically 2 consecutive weeks, meaning that every day was up for 2 consecutive weeks, just to clarify. The Nasdaq also up 16 out of the last 18 sessions. First time since 2007. The last time before that was 1999. When you put that in perspective, the money coming into the market over the last 3 quarters, this does look very reminiscent, if you've been around in those days, 1999, 2007. Where are we going from here? If we look at the NDX, we did fall back just a little bit of a wishy-washy day. But, there were areas that were fairly strong today. For example, if we look at GLD as a proxy for gold, gold is marching higher. There was good interest, option interest, unusual option activity back here on the 3rd. That was last week. Had a chance to talk about it in my session. Popped up the next day and continued to march higher. Silver on the same day had really good activity. Upside call spread looking up here next year. Again, another good day for silver. But it wasn't just precious metals. If we look at, for example, /BTC, Bitcoin futures making a nice breakout. Strong interest today. Unusual option activity in BITO, which is up 8.4%. And on BITO, it was the BITO, whatever you want to call them, right? The ProShares Bitcoin. It was on the November 50 calls. So if we come back over here, we go to November on those 50 calls out here, for example, 47 out 50 right there against 42 in open interest. So we had significant activity pointing to higher prices for BITO. Also, we talked about GLD, BITO. You saw it in Mara, for example, today. So again, it's kind of spreading out. I have a search that I use, a scan that I use. In my sessions, I show people how to use. Again, these are stuff that's coming up on those searches. So again, some plays in the Bitcoin space, gold, for example, gold stocks, some bullish interest in GDX today as well. But also, again, you're seeing the one end, but also it's spilling over into materials plays. So, for example, VALE has been of interest to me. It's a pretty good stock. They missed earnings. They declined here. Not great, but today we're seeing a pretty strong bounce out of VALE. And VALE, it was the 10 December 1250. So we're basically at the money. We're looking out here just a little bit, but again, makes me wonder, is this the beginning of maybe some interest on a stock that's trading at a relative value? And it wasn't just confined to VALE, for example. It did spill over into companies like CLF, for example. CLF was higher on today's session. And as we look at CLF here, it was out in the, what's my scan here? It was out here in the 12, it was the 12 November expiration, and stretching out here to 24 and 25. Again, some bullish interest coming here at CLF, and it was also an FCX. So CLF's more of a steel producer, FCX, copper and gold, for example, but even an FCX today. A roll in the December expiration, rolling out from the 38, rolling out to the 41. Yes, there's some profit taking, but it's also raising the potential move in FCX 41. This is one we followed for a while. If you guys have been in my classes, you know this. We've been, since bullish activity we saw back here in late September, looking for upside to 45, 44. So again, some movement in metals today. As we look at, another part of this over the weekend, the House passed what? The infrastructure bill. This is something I posted on a little over a week ago on our blog, which everyone has access to. Option markets find EVs as infrastructure vote looms. There was a number of stocks that saw significant interest. Go figure that today they're seeing similar interest. And just prior to that, a few days before, a week before, you saw it in First Solar and some of these other companies as well. But today, for example, let's just look at one of these. Fuel Cell up nicely after last week's big move and significant activity, probably expecting to see some passage of a bill that would benefit them. And again, up 20% today on Fuel Cell. And if you look at Fuel Cell, it was the 12 Nov $10 strike price here. But again, you saw it continue to roll out as the price continued to move. And so the EV space, LCID, for example, was on the list today. QS, which makes a solid, they're in the process of developing a solid-state battery. They had good testing back here in terms of the ability, and they're looking to expand that. GM was on the list today. Just a number of stocks, Fisker, nickel as well. So a lot of these EV companies, you're seeing some bullish activity in. And again, you saw that really start to hit a little over a week ago, and we're seeing that continuation today based on today's option activity. Now, as we think about what's going on in the interest rates, and we talked about the Fed here, how are they moving Treasury yields? So again, more hawkish, but look what's happening here. So if we look at the 10-year, it's up 0.44 or 3% today. We look at the 30-year, TYX, for example. This was up basically flat on the session. Then we look at VX, which was up even more sharply at 0.66. And this is something I shared for our TheoTrade clients last week, that look, the expectations the Fed gets more hawkish. We may see some selling in bonds, but we're going to see a flattening in the curve. And inevitably, we'll probably see the 30-year stalemate here, or probably decline a little bit, but we're going to see the 5-year continue to rise. And so we're going to see this convergence of 5, 10, and 30. And eventually, the Fed will start to raise rates to whatever degree. My guess, we're starting to see long-term rates catch down with the current 0 to 0.25% target rate, which is influencing 3-month Treasury bills the most. So interesting as we look at Duke Energy today, DUK. This is a utility stock. Utility stocks are generally expensive. Duke, though, may have upside here towards 108. They've already had their earnings. And today we saw a little bit of bullish activity come into Duke in the December expiration. 9,900 contracts, mostly bought at around this amount, around this price here. So again, is there the possibility of Duke maybe running back towards 110, or at a minimum maybe looking at 108? So I think Duke's one that you could look for tomorrow and the next day. Maybe we start to catch a little bit of a bounce here, and there could be some near-term opportunity to be bullish in Duke Energy. So those are the bullish ones. But today, there was a pre-earnings. It may not help you right now, but it is interesting if you like unusual option activity, if it's something that you're following. And on the note of option activity, again, going back to that Goldman Sachs report, that single stock option nominal value is about 140% of the shares, meaning that if you add up all the shares that are traded on individual stocks, times it by the price, the options volume is trading 140% of it. Just crazy. Most of these options, 72% of which they're trading with an expiry of 2 weeks or less. If you follow this activity, a lot of it's front week stuff, generally with a few days left. On CMPS, you'll see today, it faded late in the session. As you look right here, so when I was looking at this earlier around here, it kind of stabilized, and then it began to roll lower from about 47 down to about 43, almost 10% going into the close. And you'll notice what kind of helped prompt this. So on CMPS, it was the November expiration. There's no weeklies on this. It's on the put side. It was a 45. It was a 45. Look at the right one here. 45 put, and then it added in and down here, probably a roll. This is rolling up from the $30 strike to the $45 strike. What is this telling you? They're expecting the price to fall, and they announced tomorrow before the market open, I believe, and we may see, and again, maybe that pressure, that whisper, and some selling today. So maybe it erases some of the potential here, but this is what we looked at earlier in my session today, is before it really started to roll lower, and we may see further downside activity here in Compass Pathways. Another stock experiencing some bearish activity today is Macy's. Macy's has been on a tear. It's at resistance. If you notice, the ATR has been increasing as it's got increasingly more volatile. They have earnings coming up on November, I believe 18th here before the market opens. But today, on a 12 November, this is maybe leading to maybe a near-term sell-off, maybe a pre-earnings kind of a whisper. Maybe they're going to miss, whatever. 11,000 contracts traded in the NOV 31. Mostly bought here. And again, just gives you kind of a bearish inkling here as Macy's has been on a real tear of late at resistance. And then all of a sudden we see a little bit of, slightly basically at the money here activity coming in, but again, giving you kind of a downside expectation. So this is one you might look for, maybe a trade through today's low or close below today's low, and maybe play a little bearish move going into the earnings. If that, and again, nothing's 100%, but it's something to consider there. Maybe an in-out spread up here, that kind of thing. Anyway, folks, it's been a pleasure. I hope this helps you on your path through the markets. It's been an interesting time. And as we look at SKU, SKU tells you what? Expect to see a high frequency of up days with that crash risk. We've had the high frequency of up days. Are we now about to realize the crash? We'll see. Anyway, it's good to be with you. Thank you. We'll see you back next week.